Good morning, everybody. Hi. Woo! We are back again. Welcome back to day 2 of Chroma Carolina. I'm your host, Jeffrey Elizabeth Copeland. I'm so happy to be here and see a couple faces returning. Now, yesterday was a lot of fun, okay? We were moving on up. We were doing some prayers. We had some food. It was a good time. But today, I think we're going to take it up a notch because we're going to be doing some one-on-one counseling and we're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of your business. Let's give it up for that. Let's do a hand clap for bringing up our businesses. Yes. Today it's all about the how, the tips, the tricks, the nitty gritty, that special sauce to take your business to where it needs to go. And I just want to give a shout out really quickly to Black and Brown Founders who is putting on this beautiful event. If you learned anything today, if there's something that you want to share with your team or your community, be sure to tweet about it. Post it on Instagram. I know some of y'all have a Snapchat. All you have to do is be sure to tag BB Founders so we can share this information with our communities and keep growing. I also want to give a quick shout out to our wonderful sponsors, the Black Squirrel Collective and M&F Bank. Thank you so much. Let's give it up. And finally, this is the starter event to what we're going to be doing in the fall, October 7th in Philly. Chroma Philly. This is all leading up to then. If you learned anything here, if you want to take your education to the next level, learn about some of these new emerging financial technologies and investing in them, join us in Philly. Also, get you a cheesesteak. So I'm very excited. I'm for real. I am so excited to introduce our first speaker for today. She came in just for the event and she's going to be showing entrepreneurs as an entrepreneur herself how you can take your business to the next level through the Black and Brown Founders Bootcamp. Everybody, welcome me in joining Sabla Alamayu.
Good morning, everyone. I think I'm going to make it a little bit interactive to see if you're all awake or if you've had your coffee, if it has kicked in and started with a question, because I'm going to be spending time talking about startups and the world of entrepreneurship. So I just want to get a sense of, all of you here. So who is thinking of starting a business or has a business initial stage or kind of, okay. Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't expect, okay. Because I want to make it relatable because depending on where you are, the problems you have at the beginning of your journey, the middle, there's no ending to it unless you've exited or sold whatever, but that whole journey is very different. The challenges are very different. So we're going to be spending time just 360 of entrepreneurship. But before I get started, I just want to introduce myself a little bit. My name is Sabla Alamayo. Context to the name. I'm originally from Ethiopia, so that's kind of where my unique name comes from. I come from an entrepreneurial family. I grew up with both my mom and dad running multiple businesses. They were in real estate, investment, flipping. They made entrepreneurship look so easy. I wouldn't have known if they were going for a 9-to-5, regular job. So I kind of grew up. They kind of set me up. I thought very differently about entrepreneurship. But fast forward, moved here to the US, which I spent most of my life here. But again, because of my background, I've always been passionate about starting business. There are so many pathways to, building building in and passing on that financial legacy. And one is really entrepreneurship, right? It gives you that freedom to build, to scale, and hopefully, pass it on. But today I'm here representing Black and Brown Founders, an amazing organization that's dedicated to, I do have access to this. Yep. Okay. Are you leading it for me? Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I am here from a context of being an entrepreneur, but passionate about the work of Black and Brown Founders, an amazing organization that runs a really much needed bootcamp program. So we're going to talk about the resources that you have at your disposal and learning something new when we come out of it. But we're going to spend time a little bit about what it entails. So if you go, just to introduce you a little bit first about the organization, Black and Brown Founders, it is all about providing community, education, access to Black and Latinx communities, focused on building businesses, keyword, with modest resource. And this is why. It's a mind-boggling data, but less than 2% of venture capital goes to Black and Brown communities. So I don't know what you think when you hear the word entrepreneurship, but a lot of the times it tends to be money, funding, venture. Like you think about these power words that can be very intimidating. Even if you have an idea, it might make you feel like, oh, I don't have access to capital, or I don't have the fund. I have the idea. Where do I even start, right? So the whole work behind Black and Brown Founders is, yes, this is the unfortunate statistics, but you can start, you can build a business with modest resource. You just need to know what that resource is, right? So that is what would lead to the most part of the sessions today with the bootcamp program, which is one of the work that is that BBF highly invests its resources in. So we can get started on that. But before I go into the details of the bootcamp, let me just tell you a little bit of those limitations that I'm talking about. I am an entrepreneur, like I briefly mentioned. I have a luxury jewelry brand, online based. I'm not a designer. I never went to design school. I have no idea about manufacturing, right? But I had this idea that there's a way to tell stories and promote the Black culture and heritage and legacy through fashion. So I love stories. I love fashion. Like I said, I'm not a designer, but I had the idea. But when I started, my limitation was I have this idea, but how do I even go? Like, I don't even know how to sketch, right? I don't even know how to manufacture, let alone who to even go to, right? But before BBF, way before University of Maryland had a boot camp, and I was privileged enough to know about it, to participate, a little bit similar, but hence why I'm so passionate about this program, because I wish BBF's offering was there when I needed it by the time I started. But I had access to something similar, not quite extensive as this. And I can tell you that's what changed the direction of my brand. I went in thinking one thing and I left completely different. Like I got out in a completely different idea, only because there were resources, strategies, tactics, network, people asking the right question to things you need to think about to set you up in a way that, yeah, it's good to have ideas. Is it viable? Is it going to bring revenue? Is it a hobby, or is it something that you can start and you can scale? Because that's a different story, right? So reason why I'm passionate about BBF and the work they're doing is it breaks down everything that you need. All right, so let's go to the next slide and then we can start talking about it. So first off, what is the Bootstrapping Bootcamp? This is just a high level overview. It's a self-paced, very interactive virtual course. It is designed to take anywhere from 10 to 16 weeks. So the program is set up so when you get in, it gives you clarity, confidence, and all that infrastructure that you need to actually set up the business. And you walk in with an idea, but you're going to validate that idea and you can take it to the next steps that you need. And it also does it without you having to rely on venture capital, right? It gives you information for your options, right? Options is, I think, the most powerful thing, because when you don't know the options you have to even work with, you go in thinking, there's only one thing I can work with. And it's like, no, you have this 5 other ways, right? So that's kind of like a high level what the boot camp is about. So if you can go to the next slide, we can actually get started into it. All right. So like I said, the program, in as little as 10 weeks, you get to validate that idea. You get to build your first prototype and launch the business with a very, very modest resource. And kind of like context to the first important things is, excuse me, validation is the first point, right? This is the part where you say, all right, I've always wanted to do this thing, whatever that thing is. It gives me energy. People tell me I'm good at it. I spend a lot of time on it. But that's where it stops. It's just an idea, right? So step one is you have to validate it. It's like, okay, great. Is it valid? And by valid, I mean, you have to take the next 2-3 steps outside of you to make sure that concept is actually something you can monetize and optimize for revenue, right? It has to get you the money, right? You have to be able to pay yourself. You have to be able to build it and scale it in a way that is viable for you, right? So validation is that hard truth. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Facts. The hard truths, it's good to know something before you invest way too much unnecessary time, energy, even a little bit of money that you might put in earlier on. And this is part of knowing yourself, right? Sometimes people start with, I have an idea, and they get into it and it is way too much that I don't like this operation thing. I don't want to have to worry about this. I just want to create the thing, right? And they end up being an entrepreneur. Like they work for other organizations. They work for creating ideas and, building other things, but for other organizations, because they don't like the idea of raising capital or doing the marketing or the sales part. They just love to build it, right? And that's okay. There's no right or wrong. It's just you need to know yourself, right? And if you're an entrepreneur, it prepares you and gives you that solid foundation that you need to then say, this is what it takes, right? You're on the right path and you have this ahead of you. Here's everything you need to know, right? So the hard truths is just knowing that fact, and it makes you more powerful. Resources and tools, those are the most important things, right? These are simple tactics, right? How to go ask for something, where to go, right? When you're trying to get that idea into the next step, what is that step? What is that? Can you break it down? So somebody that is able to walk you through 1, 2, 3, this is where you go, this is what you do it. Those are the tools, the resources that you need to be able to even build on that idea to begin with. And lastly, access to funds, right? We said you can start with modest resource, but it is resource. You need funds at the end of the day, right? It may not be the VC fund, but you do need the fund. So being able to get access to funds, or where to get it, or just even how to get it, that is very powerful, right? So those are all the things that are kind of packaged and how it's designed into the bootcamp program. Now, we're going to spend a good amount of time to what you see at the bottom part, which is what the 10 weeks looks like and why it's set up that way. So you'll see each box is an individual week that is dedicated to an individual area, an important area of an entrepreneurship. So this is my favorite part. The first part that you start is by learning about yourself and learning how to set goals. This is the part where you get to have a party with yourself, and you're Worst enemy, which is your innermost critique, right? This is, ooh, I have this idea. Oh, I have this great idea. Who am I? Like, why am I qualified? So and so had this resource to be able to do it. I don't, right? Oh, so and so had this network. That's why they were able to get connected to such and such. I don't. I don't have that network. I don't even know how to get it, right? That is you having conversation with you, right? That is you limiting yourself from even proceeding further to even testing it, right? So the first part in business, and I can confirm that for you as an entrepreneur, is it is so important to start your business by reframing your mindset, right? If you have limiting um, assumptions or expectations, doubt, fear, um, just any type of stereotypical way of thinking you have when you think about businesses, right? Because you've seen it in the past and you're thinking it is what it is, it's gonna be the situation. It's gonna catch up, right? You're gonna build on it, and then when time gets tough, that noise gets louder, right? It's like, see, this is why I said what I said. Like, this is why it's not going to work out, or it comes back at you. So before you talk about money and marketing and sales and let me create a logo and let me create a website, you have to talk. You have to spend time with yourself, right? What are some of the healthy habits you need to build to run a business? What are some of the routines you need to get into, right? How are you with time management? Do you know how to prioritize your time in your, competing priorities well? What is your ideal lifestyle? I mean, you're starting a business, you're walking away from being employed by other companies. This is you. You're creating your empire, right? You have to have an ideal lifestyle that you want, right? What does that look like? If you don't put it to paper, you're like in this foggy brain, right? You're like, yeah, I have an idea, I want to do this, I want to start a business, but you just don't have the clarity of why you're even trying to get to that point, right? So to get from point A to point B, you have to have that ideal lifestyle, and you have to know the habits and the routines, some of the skill sets that you need. And the beauty in entrepreneurship is once you are able to reframe your mindset, almost everything in entrepreneurship, you can learn it. It's like the skills, the knowledge, everything you need, you can learn it, right? In fact, there's no formula. I went to graduate school. I did my MBA at University of Maryland. I promise you, MBA did not prepare me for anything because the MBA program is designed for mature organizations, and you're going in to an organization that's been established and you're just helping them go from certain established structured to another thing, right? In the world of entrepreneurship, you're like in this roller coaster. The idea doesn't even exist, right? It doesn't even exist. It's in your head and you're just trying to make it into something. So the first part is dedicated to reframing your mindset, but also getting to know yourself and understanding what are you passionate about, right? What are some of your skill sets? Just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean you have all the skills that you need. And sometimes you might have certain skill sets, you're so good at it, but other people are pointing it out, right? They might say, you're really good with this like makeup. Like people are like coming at you and you might make a business out of it. Or you put up so many great events and people come to you and say, can you throw my, birthday? Can you do, handle my like people come to you because they love the work that you do, right? So sometimes you have that skill set, and if you enjoy what you're doing, that's like the best combination into how you can turn it into a business, right? You don't want to dread it because the journey itself is not the easiest journey. So so the first part is it's the foundation when you're building a house. Everything after that all your interior design and making the house look fancy and being able to complete it, that's where marketing, advertising, sales, outreach, all of that come. The ground, the foundation is your mindset, your confidence, your clarity, everything. That's the foundation. When that crumbles, the house is not safe. It's not safe. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it, once you're set up with the first part, is to understand your market. Oftentimes, the challenge in business is idea is just an idea. It may not go any further outside of an idea for several reasons. Sometimes you have a general idea, but nothing specific after that, right? It's fuzzy. Sometimes you have no access to it. Like you might have a good idea, but you have absolutely no, it's kind of like the customer, the way you work about it is just so far out from your immediate access to even go and talk to somebody. It just remains an idea because you don't have access to it. Other times it's just magical thinking. It's just a nice idea that is not feasible or you cannot translate into something. But this is where you need to know, great. It's the most powerful thing is after knowing what you're capable of, to be able to have that idea and to then say, okay, I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to break it down so I understand who the market is, right? And that market, number one rule has to start with a community of access you have. You must be able to go and you have to be able to say, hey, idea, and then, but be able to test it out. And you can only do that in your immediate community, right? You have to be able to test it out. You have to be able to talk to people. And you're only able to do that when you have a community that you can tap into, right? Leading from that is being able to discover your customers. So kind of to make it a little bit more like as an example, when I started my idea, I wanted to dominate the events, the wedding space, and design customizable jewelry for events. So brides, bridesmaids, galas, I listed everything and I said, there's a market for that. I'm going to create a customizable jewelry where people come to me. I'll give them a set of design. They can pick their gemstones, their colors. We create I was so passionate about it. And then I went to a boot camp and there were a couple of investors. And after they asked me 3 questions, I just sat down and I'm like, okay, maybe I didn't think through this. They were saying, what makes you think a bride during her event, like her most stressful but milestone, is going to sit down and customize her jewelry? Does she even want that? And I said, yeah, that it's a very, for her bridesmaid, it's the color, like, I'm sure she would like that. And they said, okay, go, try it. So my homework was to talk to 25 brides. So I was literally like, do you know anybody getting married? I talked to 25 brides and you know what the data said? Jewelry was their last priority. So I gave them a list of, I didn't even give them a topic, but I asked them if they prioritized an important to-do for their wedding, what was important. And jewelry was the last. So I had to come to the hard truth and say, it was a really good idea, right? But if people don't need it, you're going to spend so much time and energy. Can you imagine like creating it and setting up all the products and production and whatever's capabilities needed to advertise it? And then you open the door and there's not going to be a customer that needs it, right? So yes, you need to understand the market, right? The fashion industry, the jewelry industry, like holistically, what are you trying to get into? That's number one. But number two, the customer. Like, what do they want? Is it a need? Like, is it an absolute need? Or it's a nice to have? It's like an enhancement to like a lifestyle, or it's for convenience, right? Or it's something that makes them feel good. What is the product that you're building? So understanding is important. This is the part where you will spend a good amount of time interviewing people, going out and asking that question, getting their response, assessing the data, analyzing it, and then seeing what the patterns are. And only after you go through that, you will be able to then design your business model, right? So you have an idea, then it's like, oh, okay, how can I now optimize it for revenue? I have this idea. How does it turn into $, right? And this is the part where you're saying, what are you selling, right? If you are like me, selling a product, literally it's a transaction. I give you the product, you give me money. If you provide service, event planning, graphic design, you're selling your service and you're getting money for your service. Other times you're creating a platform, right? This is like the Yelp, the Facebook, or, you know, there's two audiences where one is the consumer. And then on the other side, there are companies that have to pay advertisement, you know, so you need to know, where are you? Like, what are you selling? How are you trying to get the money? What's the model like? So in order to do that, again, you have your foundation, you understand your market and your customer. Then and only then can you sit down, taking all that information, you can then say, okay, how am I making the money from this idea? Because you've talked to the customers, they're validated responses for you. Now you're trying to make something of it in terms of revenue model. Which then leads to funding. Now you set up your idea, you have a concept, then how do you proceed further, right? Venture capital, like I said, less than 2% of VC fund goes to Black and Brown founders. But this is the part where you need to be creative. Going back to myself again, my brand is 100% self-funded. I did not even, VC is just like this big scary monster for me when I think about it. I just see the stress and like I just never pursued it. I tried to find creative ways. So for example, when you're early stage in your business, you're not going to walk into the bank and they're not going to give you a loan. Like, you have nothing to show for, right? But you get an idea of, if you were to get a loan, what would the interest be, right? That's kind of how I started. And then I went to family and friends, or like extended network, and put together an idea that I had and made it in a way like, okay, if you put your money in a bank right now, this is how much interest you're getting in your savings, right? Invest in my business within a certain period of time, I'll pay it back with this interest, right? So if you put your money in your bank, and I don't know, at that point, unless you have it in a money market or CD, just a basic savings is not even, it wasn't even 1%, right? And I'm like, I'll give you 3% or 5% on your money. But for this, you do need a closer network, people that know you, people that have a little bit of confidence in, you know, your character. It's kind of hard to go to strangers and be like, invest in my idea. And you're like, who are you? How do I know you're not going to, you know, use up all that money and I'm not going to see the return? But the other aspect to it is during the initial part, when you're in much need, the idea, and this is where a lot of common mistakes happen. People start spending money to start the business. You don't want to do that. This is the part where you want to start by building a prototype and building it and then showing it. Say, here's what the product would look like if I was to make it. And this is what the features are going to look like. This is what the product would look like. And the amount of money you're going to spend to build a prototype is so different than building the actual product. So here's an example. Jewelry. the product I offer is 14 karat gold plated on brass. Gold is expensive. I don't have the capital to go and make the product and then come and show you, here's my jewelry line. So what I did was I hired graphic designers and jewelry, like people who have certain software, CAD design with 3D rendering, and I designed the jewelry in a 3D model, and it looked like an actual like catalog kind of thing. And whatever my idea was, I literally presented it in a PowerPoint to my first focus group to give feedback on, would you wear it? Does this speak to what I'm trying to do? Just to kind of get a sense of, is this even something you would buy, right? I didn't spend much money. I barely spent money versus I have an idea, I built the model. Yep, once I launch, it's going to get a revenue. This is what the profit will look like. I didn't do that because I didn't know. So this is the part where once you do your initial work of knowing the customer, talking to the customer, and kind of sitting down to do, okay, how am I going to really do this thing? If it's a service product, like for example, I read Dropbox. When they initially built the company, they literally did a demo of how Dropbox would work. Oh, when you save the file here, the folder would do this. And on the other side, they did not build the actual system. They didn't build the tool. So whether you're thinking service or an actual physical product, you can show your concept without actually building the product, right? If you were building a laptop, literally it's to say, you don't need to make the laptop. Just do a rendering of what the physical product would look like. Hey, here's the functionality. And when you press this button and the computer would power up. So you're essentially communicating the features, functionalities, usage, the feel, the look in a virtual way without going and spending too much money. So this is another reason why raising funds and then excessively, spending too much at the initial stage, you do not want to do that, right? So again, during the setup of the bootcamp, it's showing you, okay, if you're not building it, then how do I do my prototype? Like, my idea is this. How do you now show this in a prototype, right? So that's kind of how we get into the details of the prototype. After you get to that point, which is a huge, milestone, then you can talk about branding and marketing and sales, right? Because now you have something to show for. You've talked to the customers, you've gotten feedback, you've tried it, you've built certain features, you know how you're going, you have like that specific roadmap, but now you need to open it up and you need to make the product, sell it to your initial users, right? And with branding, you need to then say, what's going to be the personality of my brand, right? What's the essence, the value that my, brand speaks for, right? Then you can start talking about the details of marketing, right? Well, how are you going to sell it? Is it just a website? Are you going to have third-party distributors? Are you going to have sales reps? Like, how does it work? You get to that point. Obviously, you strategize on that, but you don't spend money and time and energy building a website and a logo for a product that may not show anything for, right? So the reason you would see things laid out in a certain way is based on the priority of what you need to spend your time on. So with the bootcamp coming back to BBF, this is the type of resources and tools. It would have even the scripts when you go out to customers. What do you need to say? Like, how do you approach them? How do you say what you say? How do you ask the questions? And when you get responses, how do you record it so that you can assess the data, right? You cannot just frantically take notes all over and then sit down and just have like, what did I mean by that? Like, and you don't even remember what you wrote. So it's very specific tools and trackers and guide and everything that you need to plan out your idea all the way to it being this physical product or an actual tangible thing that you can sell and monetize on. And then next slide. So the program was founded by people who went through that experience. The best way to start a business is sometimes after being in that position and you know too well, and you say, you know what, let me create something that could pass down to peers and people on that same journey who want to embark on that. And essentially, the individuals that you see up here are critical to the boot camp, from being entrepreneurs, from being in the venture capital experience in the Silicon Valley, starting businesses, raising funds, and being tapped by so many organizations to share their skill because of what they've gone through. It's the creation of an amazing program that can be passed down so people can really learn something from that journey and in that space. And you can take it and save yourself all that time and pain that you don't need to go through, and learning from those before you who've done it well, done it and failed, and they'll give you their reasoning on if something fails, why, right? And in hindsight, there's always lessons learned, but there's also challenges, right? And then you focus your time on what is that challenge and how can we find a solution for it, right? So next slide. So for the boot camp, if you are serious about your idea and you are going to take the next step, it's important to keep certain things in mind. Let me just put it that way. One, even when people give you access to funds or access to network or resources, at the end of the day, you have to do the work, right? Just because somebody comes and says, hey, I have a list of contacts you can reach out to for this, and this area, they're just giving you the key to the access, right? But you still have to do the work for whatever is needed to be able to talk to that person, to network with that person. And when you do get the opportunity, you have to be ready, right? And you're only ready when you're putting that much time in it. So you have to have the time that you're willing to carve out to learn and to actually do the work that you need to do in the exercises and the steps that you need to take, whether it's talking to the customers, whether it's just sitting down and figuring out what you're good at, or what habit you need to build, or what routine you need, or whatever that exercise is, you need to put in the work. And that's time, right? And if you already do have the idea, that's where it starts. You have to have an idea to be able to start with the program. And again, you will, with this journey, there's like the hard truth part comes out, right? Sometimes you have an idea and it just sucks. It's not going to work. There's no secret to it. But that's part of the exercise, right? You might have 2 or 3 ideas and you're exploring them, and you realize that one of the ideas actually not viable or doesn't have the customer base. But as a result of going through that exercise, you actually find a spin-off solution to something else that you think is the problem, right? There have been people who walk in with one idea and completely walk out with a different one, but they wouldn't have if they didn't start with that idea that is not viable, right? So you have to be able to take constructive criticism. It's not always pretty. It's challenging. And when it is, you have to be able to pause and reflect and say, okay, I need to kind of pivot from here. Or you can say, you know what, I'm on the right path, but it's just not quite it. And you have to be able to take that feedback and say, you know what, this is specifically not it. I'm in the right direction, but I need to kind of change it a little bit, right? You cannot be rigid in your ways and just kind of be resistant to the changes you need to make. So if all of that is something that you're open to, entrepreneurship is the worthy journey. It's a very challenging journey, but it's a worthy journey. And with the right community to support you and the access to funding, or at least knowing your options and smart ways you can work towards the idea to validate it. That is the key. So boot camps like the ones that BBF offers is essentially a complete pack of everything, right? From clarity and the confidence, the actual practical tools to set up that infrastructure, to the resource and network that is needed. And next up is, yep, and this is pretty much, I kind of talked to it, but it's kind of a bundle of the practical need that the you know, the trackers and the things to say and how to say it, or like what to think, right? Even people telling you what are your top skill sets, and then that's your homework. And you have to do certain exercises that require you not to just do it yourself, but you have to reach out to your friends and be like, can you tell me what I'm good at? Like, why do you come to me? Like, can you help me understand about me a little bit? So there are certain forced exercises that you're given that normally you wouldn't think about to do yourself because you're so focused on the idea. So you're just like, go, 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 go. But there are practical resources and guidelines and coaches to sit and say, okay, talk to me. Like, where are you stuck? What are you trying to do? Walking you through it to be able to get to the next stage that you need to get to. And then I've talked on access to funding. One of the things that I really do appreciate with BBF is just the amount of like doors they can open with just simple information, right? Don't underestimate somebody sending an email on your behalf, or somebody saying, you know what, Jeffrey, I know this person. Let me just call that person and connect you, right? That is so powerful to what you need to do. So the access to that community is key. And obviously knowing, hey, there's a list of these grants you can qualify for, or scholarships you can apply to, or whatever that information is. You can go to that. That is one less work you have to go running around to figure out that information. So all of that gets packaged into the program. And I think the next one is last slide. If again, you're pursuing your business and you're interested in pursuing it, BBF is getting ready to start a cohort on May 31st. The application starts on May 1st. Right now, you can go to the bootstrappingbootcamp.com, and there's a join waitlist tab that you're going to see, where you can just join. And then once the application period starts on May 1st, one of the team will reach out to you. There's an assessment and an interview period. And once you finish through all of that, you can officially kick it off May 31st. So if anybody's thinking about that, I'm super excited for you. I'm rooting for you. Like I said, I wish BBF was around when I was getting ready to start my business, but I did have another one. And that's kind of why I'm standing here with a business. Started with one product, but it has scaled to a very big brand. So it's possible. So I'll leave it for you for questions or comments. Scholarships available. You're welcome. Sure. I think now is even like a good example I can give you is like we all went through COVID, right? So just imagine if you are like starting something pre-COVID and then you're going and you're like, wait, my model did not um it needs human beings and now the entire world has shut down, right? And that happened to actually a lot of businesses, right? A lot of mom and pop shops, a lot of, all the service based industry took a hit, right? So just put yourself in that position of you're an entrepreneur with this great idea and model, but it required certain setup. Then what? One thing that I did not actually, I'm so glad you asked that question. One thing that I didn't really touch on earlier when I'm talking about entrepreneurship is the importance, because of just the shift that's happening in our world, the importance of making sure technology is an integral part into your idea, right? So, for example, if you were in a certain program and certain disruption happened, I know COVID is a drastic example, but I'm trying to use the most drastic example, and then anything below that is a but sometimes it's not so much about shifting the complete direction of your business. It's just so much about, okay, you are thinking in this way to provide it, but this thing is happening and just completely sidetracking your ability to be able to pursue the idea, or if you had opened the business, from being able to operate the business, right? So what are the existing resources and means right now? Like, you're not waiting for something to be created for you. What are some of the means now, right? Going back to the example of the service providers, some of the businesses that thrived are those that had technology embedded in their model, right? If it was a mom and pop shop, they were able to easily run with delivery. They were able to integrate with the Uber Eats and all that. So they didn't have people coming to them, but they had the food going out to them, right? There are businesses that's not how it was. You go in, you order, you get the food, and you walk away. They had to completely close it, and they could not do anything with it, right? Other people that monetized, they took their ideas virtually, right? They tried to find a way to monetize by creating content around it, right? But sometimes it might be a little bit more challenging than that, right? So it is obviously very situational, but sometimes it's about thinking differently. Sometimes it's completely pivoting, right? You may not be pivoting from the industry, but you might be pivoting from that particular model of running the business, right? Also, it kind of comes back to funding too, right? Sometimes being able to tough out some of the hard times means you're like expending money with no incoming cash flow, right? And until you're able to find other venues and opportunities, you still have to kind of operate, right? So the approach might be funding based, but some of the approach might be stick to where you are, but just do it differently. Obviously, how different is it is dependent on the challenge, if that kind of addresses the question. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. And with that, I hand back. Of course. Okay, let's give another round of applause to Subla. That was, oh my goodness, I really enjoyed that. Number one, go Terps. Yeah. All my A&T folks were like, wait, what? Get out of here. Anyway, yeah, something that Subla said that it was also mentioned yesterday that I think it's important that we all remember, and myself included as a small business person, we have to invest in ourselves, and we have to invest in the knowledge, and we have to invest in the community. And I think something that is very special about Chroma Carolina and Chroma Philly is having these networking opportunities so you can connect with people that have been there, done that, and can teach you and get you to where you want to be. And that is why I think this bootstrapping boot camp is so special, why Chroma Philly is so special, and why after, this afternoon, we all need to be exchanging information.
Okay, so we have our next speaker that's going to be getting ready to come up very soon. I'd like to take a moment again to prompt you folks to check out our QR code online if there's any information that you'd like to circle back from to get more information about the Bootstrapping Bootcamp. That website was bootstrappingbootcamp.com. And if you snap that QR code, it'll take you straight to the Black and Brown Founders website. So we have our next speaker who is going to be coming from the Black Squirrel Collective, which you've been hearing me talk about often. And I'm sure some folks are like, Black Squirrel, what's it, chipmunks, or what are we doing, y'all? So the Black Squirrel Collective is a very, very, very special foundation that has started the last year or so. And we are going to be talking to the founder of the Black Squirrel Collective. He is working with major private and public partners to address the changing market conditions created by the pandemic. Subla mentioned that, and they're doing the work. And he is going to be talking about how we can target generational wealth. Can we get a clap for generational wealth? Because I feel like we say it, but we need to know it. So let's go ahead and give another round of applause to Mr. Kevin T. Williams and the Black Squirrel Collective.
Thank you, Jeffrey. First of all, let me just say, by virtue of everybody's presence here today is a token of your investment in yourself. You've taken time out of your life, out of your day. If you have other jobs, to be able to come here and pick up some of this knowledge. So pat yourself on the back for that. Before I get started, there's going to be some kind of crossover from some of the things that Sebly was talking about and that I'm going to talk about. And it's going to really be rooted in the training and education. Okay. So I want to, first of all, acknowledge a lot of the things that she said, everything she said. Black and Brown Founders have been a part of my life since its inception on a lot of different levels. But I want to make sure that you guys understand the importance of how you have to be dynamic, and also how you have to think about what's happening today, okay? Because sometimes you will have to pivot. I can't tell you how much what you were saying about pre-COVID and in the middle of COVID and how you come out of COVID has affected a lot of small businesses. And it's actually one of the motivations for one of the tools that we created at Black Squirrel. First thing I want to talk about is meaning Black and Brown people's role in today's economy. It's no secret. We are consumers. We buy more than we save, right? Part of that requires that we have to change our own behaviors. It's easy to talk about, I need to get money. I have to get somebody to invest in me. Well, first thing you got to do is invest in yourself. I think somebody was talking about it yesterday, where if you're eating out every day, if you were just able to eat out half as much, right? And think about replacing that money in the savings to invest in yourself, in your future, your retirement, that changes your dynamic, right? So it's important to think about that, because this should be a motivator for you on why you do the things you do. Also, I want to point out, in today's situation, we're in an economy where the rich have gotten very rich, the poor have gotten very poor. One of the other aspects of what was talked about with BBF and what I will talk about is that we're trying to make the training and education to do these things accessible. Because if you understand, a lot of you guys went to North Carolina A&T, and if you went 20 years ago, it's a heck of a lot cheaper to get that education than what it is today. And in Philadelphia, where I live, I worked for almost 10 years at Drexel University. And the funny thing is, Drexel University sits right in West Philadelphia, 99% Black. It costs $87,000 a year to attend. So they buy up the community, but they do not give the community access to that education. So one of the things that I was able to do is I was actually able to talk the university into letting me literally take the professors out of the classrooms and make them work on Saturdays to give training classes for entrepreneurship to people in the communities. I did that for 8 years. Now, I'm proud to say what we were able to do is over that course of time, we were able to get the local banks to offer grants to some of the people who successfully completed the courses. We were also able to get some of the local CDFIs, community development financial institutions. They gave loans, reasonable interest rate loans to the businesses. Over the past 8 years, through the banks, we gave out well over $100,000 in grants and over $200,000 in debt for those companies to grow their businesses. We're talking about restaurants, cleaning companies, daycare centers. Because one of the things I notice is that our entrepreneurial motivations tend to evolve around our willingness to solve problems in our community. That's another driver. That's another motivator, right? So when we do these things and when we talk about community, I'm going to talk about it in a different sense. I want to talk about it in the terms of an ecosystem, because this is going to tie in to a lot of the things during COVID that I actually played with and actually tried to put a little bit more of a spin on. Okay. How are we looking here? Can you reduce it? Is the whole screen correct there? But you can move to the next slide. So first of all, let me tell you about Black Squirrel. I'm going to tell you two things. Number one, this is our mission statement. And what we did is we realized, first of all, that we have all of these resources. By resources, I mean you have the CDFIs, you have the universities, you have the banks, right? You have all of these resources that are available, but they haven't really all talked to each other. They're all a part of the same ecosystem, but they haven't figured out how to connect to each other to support each other, right? So when I go back to that model about the Be Smart, the entrepreneurship program, it's a matter of getting the banks to understand that they should be investing in some of these local businesses. We didn't ask them to just hand the money over. We said, after they've accomplished these things, and what we did is we literally put the banks in a panel. And after 12 weeks, the entrepreneurs went and they pitched their business, right? So, and as an example, we had a young man. He's a barber, pretty good barber. But what he did is he wanted to buy the store next to him. He just, in the previous 5 years, decided he wanted to learn how to make hats. So what did he do? First thing he did is he invested in himself. He literally took his money that he made cutting hair. He sought out the best hat makers he could find. One of them just happened to be in northern Pennsylvania. He spent weeks at this guy's business learning his craft. He came back and he started making his own hats. But every month he would go back to learn more. So then he came to us and he says, I realized doing his market research that there are no other handmade hat makers in the whole city of Philadelphia. He says, I want to be that source. He went through our program, he put together his business plan, And we said, okay. We put him in front of the 4 banks. He says, okay, I want to make hats. This is where hats are in our society. This is how we make them. This is how it creates an image for professionals and on. And this is how much my hats are going to cost. This is how much I need in resources, and I need $80,000. And so the banks, they're sitting up here, they're shooting questions at him. He answered every last one of them, right? And then at the end of the pitch, they gave him that $80,000 grant money. He quickly invested that money into building a business. And he is not only the only African-American hat maker in Philadelphia, he's the only hat maker, period. Okay? So, and then all of a sudden, one of the things he did, he decided, because at first he was just making men's hats, like Stetsons, right? Made them nice. Then he started making hats for women. He doesn't cut hair anymore. But my point is, this is how we give resources. This is how we build and use those connectors in our community, in our ecosystem. We bring the money, we bring the resources, we bring the ideas, right? And so that's what we do at Black Squirrel. It's not us saying that we have the money. We don't, but we know people that do. We don't have the resources, but we know people who have those resources. So we bring those pieces together to be that nexus point, right? Next slide, please. And so what we did through all of this, because my partners, these are people I've known for at least 10 years each. We've been in common ventures with each other before, but there was one common element that we always had. It was a process. And the first thing we did is there was always a training component to whatever we did. Whatever problem we're trying to solve, I could be going into, I can tell you, I went into do some work with a lady who she inherited when her father passed away. She inherited a waste disposal company. She had no idea how to manage a waste disposal company. She needed resources. First thing she needed to be trained. We had to find her a mentor, right? So that's the first thing. At the same time, while she's learning the business, she's losing money. So then we had to find more resources for her. And those resources were, she needed to be able to turn over the trash trucks. So what we did is we partnered her with a local construction company just to do site disposal when they do demolitions. Then she needed access to capital. We introduced her to one after another, but what happened was she had to show better cash flow before they would give her any money. But once we got all of those things cleared up, that gave her access to opportunity. This is a process we follow in every project we do. We know this is our secret sauce. This is how we go to business each and every day. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, it's a process that's time consuming at the front end. But as you work your way across these different areas, once you've established what your training need to be, and you've accomplished those training objectives, and you start looking for the resources that you need, and you understand what it takes, what type of capital requirements there are, you are 90% to what you need to be. Next slide, please. So this brings us to how do we bring these pieces together? First thing I want to do is I want to talk about these are the three most prominent ways to create generational wealth. Now, let's face it. We all, either we were in the middle of the tech boom or we were on the tail end. Didn't matter. Either we got some money or we got no money. But what we did get was inspiration because we saw what was happening. But more importantly, we also realized how the money was being invested. And very little of the venture capital money being invested went to minority companies. Okay, let's not cry about it, but let's think about how we build our own ecosystem to support the financial needs. Believe it or not, there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. One of those is going to be through entrepreneurship. Another is going to be through real estate, and another is investment. Now, as you all go through your evolution, how you evolve. And you become not just an entrepreneur, you become a bona fide business. One or two things are going to happen. You're going to be fine just where you're at, and you start clocking money, and you think, okay, I've arrived. But at some point, you need to think about how you're going to be insuring on your future and for the generation after you. So you got to think about the investment. It's not going to be entrepreneurship alone. At some point, you got to think about how you invest the success into your future and your family's future. And if what you're doing requires that you have a facility that you work at, I can't tell you how many times in Philadelphia during the pandemic, we literally walked the business corridors that you got a community. And then you'll have a strip of about 4 or 5 blocks where there's literally 10 businesses each block that serve that surrounding community. So obviously COVID shut down that corridor. Those businesses were locked up. 2 things came out of that. Number one, they understood how to sell their products and services, but they didn't understand how to structure their finances so that when they needed money, they could go to Uncle Sam and say, hey, I want some of that PPP money. Uncle Sam said, oh, I can't help you. Now they're mad. Well, that was an opportunity. It was an opportunity for us to get the resources. And how do we talk about that? We talk about that because there's this thing called the SBA. It's a double-edged sword. They give you low interest loans. They help you in your business, but it's hard to get that money. But you know what's easy to get? That every single small business association region has what they call a SBDC, a Small Business Development Corporation. Now they get fed money from the SBA. They get fed money from the EDA to make sure that they can help the neighboring businesses. So what we did in Philly is we worked with Temple University. They are Temple University and Widener University. So they have the government funding to help these businesses. But the businesses don't know they exist. So what we do when we're walking up and down the corridors, we're talking to businesses, and then we start asking the right questions. How are you managing your funds? How much does it cost for you to operate each month? And once we add all of this information up, we say, okay. Oh, we say, oh, do you have a website? No. Do you have a Facebook page? No. I don't need a Facebook page, right? Because they're a sub shop. They sell hoagies. They sell cheesesteaks. But you know what? When they got shut down, they had no way of operating. They didn't take electronic payments. And this is across the city. But this is an easy fix. So we go to the SBDC and we say, okay, here's the problems we see. They say, oh, we can fix their digital footprint for free. We got $1.5 million from the EDA. Nobody told me, right? He said, okay, now we have these other companies who need help with their financials. I said, oh, we got MBA students and bring them in. We'll just use some of the SBA money at $18 an hour to pay the MBA students to help them structure their financials. This is us bringing the resources where they need to be. This is how we structure an ecosystem. This is how we create an environment in a community that actually, when we put more thought into it, becomes self-sustaining. All right. And so when we talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about how we bring the training resources, financial literacy, marketing tools, technologies. That's the core. It's never going to be any simpler than that. So we're going to supply those resources. We're going to search out the grants, like I said, through SBDC or through the Commerce Department, and we're going to help them qualify for business loans. So one of the contracts we have with the city, because we've done this a couple of times, and they said, hey, I got an idea. They said, can you use, which at the very end, I'll show you something. Can we use your system? because this is the city, and this is not just Philadelphia. This is a lot of cities. They have what they call a small business lending network. Now, that small business lending network is designed to offer low interest loans to small businesses. Now, here's the kicker. Over 200 businesses in Philadelphia applied for these loans. I want somebody to guess, how many businesses do you think actually got approved for those loans? 10. 10 out of 200 businesses. So they said, Kevin, can you use your system? We gave you all of our rejects. Can you get them to reapply? So we said, yeah. So this is, once again, this is us creating the environment, the ecosystem, to allow that whole small business community to survive. So really, and this is a couple of ways that we've done it, where we first have to stabilize the business by helping them build a solid infrastructure. Then we give them the resources by which they can actually start to scale their business. Now, what we do is we focus on what I call micro businesses, meaning you're under $1 million, because that's where the real problems lie. If we can get you up to $1 million in revenue, that means you have your processes in place. That means you have your financial structure done. It means you have a marketing strategy. All of these things are going to happen as we start building the components. Okay. After doing some research, one of the things I found in this area, in the Charlotte area, they have Operation Hope. But throughout the state, they have the Small Business Development Fund. There was some conversation about this fund yesterday. This is an area that I would be more than happy to engage local businesses, local organizations, to understand how to tap in to this. This is essentially what I was telling you we do with Temple. I can assure you, if I dig deeper, it's going to have SBA written in there somewhere. Okay? When you're talking about getting services that you need to build your business, a lot of these services are available. But sometimes you need to have somebody that's going to help you navigate it. Okay. So now we're going to switch over to talk about real estate development. Let me tie this back to what I was talking about in entrepreneurship. When we're walking the corridors, once again, we're in Southwest Philly now, where it's primarily people of African descent, African immigrants who've come over. Some of them don't speak English. Most of them speak French and other dialects. But one of the things that also occurred is they aren't able to translate and understand what's being given to them or being told to them. So one of the things that we also built in was offering translation services. So that way, we would even have the documentation transcribed for them so that they could read it. So that now when they're making agreements, they understand what the terms of those agreements are. And those agreements are usually with the SBDCs. So we're talking about the services we can bring and blah, 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 blah. And then they say, well, how do I get it? So now we got to read through the agreements, get them to sign. Go back one. And so anyway, when we're doing this, come to find out, the majority of those businesses are renting. They're renting the facilities. And we said, check with your landlord, see who the owner is, see if they're willing to sell. Because some of these businesses, they were able to sock away a little bit of money. Plus, the city actually has money that they will help you. They have programs in Philadelphia up to $300,000 to purchase the business that you do business in. But the owner has to be willing to sell. Lo and behold, what we found, 40% of those businesses are owned by people who live in Israel, France, Korea. Okay? So now we're talking about, you can't even get to some of these business owners. So at the end of the day, we're saying what happens is they'll go up on the rent. They know that you're making more money. Okay, you make 20% more money. They're going to take half of that. Is it time for me to go up on your rent? The only way you can control that is if you own the property. And that's from a business standpoint. Now I'm going to shift for just a minute because from just for a regular household, for a lot of people, it's the equity in your home that you would first think about using to invest in yourself, right? Another source that I've found with some of the people who've come through our programs is they'll tap into their retirement funds. Okay, you can move to the next one now. And so one of the things that we started to develop, and this is something that we want to bring to this area. This is our real estate development program. It's kind of complicated. I'm going to try to make it real simple. Access to capital, access to resources, access to land. Those are the things we focused on. We went to the city of Philadelphia and we said, okay, city of Philadelphia, I understand that you actually have land in your possession that you want to sell. How much land do you have? They said, we got 2,900 empty lots. This was at the beginning of COVID. It took us 1.5 years to develop this program. So, okay, Philadelphia, we got it. This is how we want to do it. We need you to be able to give us those properties. We'll make sure that 51% are affordable housing, right? And I said, so how much do you have left? They said, oh, I'm thinking that it went down. No, now it went up to 6,500 properties. In the city of Philadelphia, there's 42,000 vacant properties. The city, as of last month, actually owns 7,000. And so our deal with the city is they sell us the property for $1 a lot as long as we do at least 51% affordable housing. Here's what we did. How do we make access to capital for the real estate developers? We interviewed 23 Black and brown companies in order to find the ones that we felt had the most likelihood of being successful here. What we want them to do is, what happens? Where did you get them from? We get these from people who flip homes. So you have industrious people like us. They say, oh, I'm going to buy that property for $40,000. I'm going to invest $100,000 into it, and I'm going to sell it for $300,000. Now, they can do that once. They can do it twice, but they can't do those two at the same time. Financially, they don't have that capacity. So what we did is we went to the Black CDFIs and we said, okay, can your balance sheet provide the loans for these guys to finance their construction? They said, no, they can't. So then what we do? So then we go to the banks. So, Mr. Banker, you have a Community Reinvestment Act requirement that you're supposed to invest in the communities. How much can you invest in these Black CDFIs? They hem and haw and they say, well, show me a good plan. This is why it took us 2 years to figure all of this out. At the end of the day, we end up with a $15 million fund. Each of the developers have to come up with 5%. Now, Demetrius, is he here? Oh, who was he? I didn't want to call him out, but he said yesterday we could build a church with 20% down, right? So what we're saying is we would do the building and the financing if the builder comes up with 5%, because we're going to use that fund. And what we did is we set it up. So, okay, we literally had the city sell 5 properties to each of the developers. Then we went to another project where they're going to give 10% for the pre-cost, pre-development, meaning that you have to get the land cleared, you got to get environmental studies, and they were given the monies on the terms that if everything works out through construction, they'll forgive that loan. At the end of the day, then the developer puts in 5%. 95% of the funding is already covered for construction. When they're halfway through that construction, the city has what they call a turn the key program, which allows city employees, firemen, policemen, teachers, whoever, to buy into these newly developed homes. And they will give them up to $75,000 as a down payment to subsidize the home. What that does is that means that the buyer walks into the house with equity. The only requirement is you got to live in it for 15 years. Now, there's little tricks. If you live in there for 5 years and the home value's going up, they're going to prorate how much they gave you. You can probably sell it and still sell it at a gain. But if we do this right, it becomes equity that you've developed and held on over time that now becomes yours. You can offer generational wealth to your family. Do you understand where I'm going with this? So these are the types of projects that we put together. These are the type of projects I'm going to tell you. It's not hard. We are now engaged with the state of Maryland and trying to replicate the program in Baltimore. We're getting calls from Oakland, California. The state of California wants to talk to us about how they can replicate it and use the state funding in order to replicate a similar project. We want to be able to do it here. We want to do it in Charlotte. We want to do it in Raleigh. We want to see if we can do it here in Greensburg. It means that we have to know who the resources are, who the government officials are, and so on down the line. So here's the thing. And this is, sometimes I get these triggers, right? Like when I hear less than 1% of all venture capital money actually goes to Black-owned companies, that shocks me into action. In this situation, 95% of all the development being done in the city of Philadelphia is being done by white developers. This is crazy to me, because what does this mean? This means if we keep going at this pace, and what they're doing, they're not building homes to sell. They're building apartments to rent. Who do you think's renting them? Okay? So we're put in a situation we don't have ownership. And if we run that on a trend of 95%, we don't even own the city that we're the majority residents in. Something's wrong there. This spurs me into action. And this is happening across the country. So I'm going to re-emphasize. Think about how we create the ecosystem. Who are the resources that we need? Where are the funding sources that we need? Where are the people who are going to commit their businesses to making this work? So let's skip this. I think I've talked about this enough. We can move on from this. This is just, real estate really is the key in a lot of ways. And we really have to think about how we do it. Now, investments. This is the tricky one. Why? Myself included, and this is how I say it. For most white people, they have been creating generational wealth for thousands of years. We've only been at this for a few hundred. Really, probably less than 3 generations, maybe 4. So we're new to this game. But we need to understand the reason, the rules, and how do we really invest with stocks and bonds. There's a few people that know, but we need to educate ourselves on how this has worked so effectively for us. We understand retirement funds. We put money into these funds. But let me tell you, this is one thing I do know. You put money into the retirement funds, right? And so what they do is they take that money and they invest it for a return. Who are they investing that money in? White companies. The white companies that are making money for white stockholders off of our dime. And they give us a percentage of that money back in the form of retirement. Is there a way that we can actually direct them to say who we want that money to go to? See, this is where we have to talk about how we can change policy. This is where we need to think about the legal system within our ecosystem, right? And then we talked about real estate. It's funny how, from a young age, I always liked reading two things: Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, right? And all the way back to the 70s, they always kept talking about how real estate was this risky investment. But I'm scratching my head now. I said, wait a minute, was that like this trick to say, don't put my money in real estate so I didn't have to compete with them? I don't know. But it seems to me that if you bought property, owned property in the 70s and 80s, you're looking pretty good right now. Okay? And if you look at where we are today and project it into the future, we can look good, but we have to invest in it. And then commodities. We talked yesterday about gold, right? And there's other commodities besides precious metals. Some of these are more risky than others. But I think, sir, you were the one yesterday. It's all about the knowledge. The more knowledge you have, the less risk involved. If you treat it like Las Vegas, guess what? You're going to lose more times than not. The house is going to win. But we need to educate ourselves about these things. Okay. So why am I talking about all these things? Because there's an impact here. We can create sustainable communities if we're smart about how we build those communities, how we support those communities. We can build sustainable businesses if we continue to educate ourselves and educate others within our ecosystem. I can't tell you, you all know it, a lot of us will walk right by a black doctor and go to a white doctor. Why? We can create a system where we can actually create it and make it more sustainable. Quick story. In my neighborhood, they're building apartments. So they'll build a 190 unit apartment complex. And I went, it's my neighborhood. I want to see what's going on. And so I'm talking to people, and the first gentleman, I said, oh, you live in the community? He says, no, I live in the suburbs, out in what they call the main line. Talk to the next person. No, I live over in Jersey. Talk to the next one. No, I live in Delaware. These are all people that built these apartments. So put this picture in your mind. They get in their car in the morning. They'll drive 10, 15 miles, come into Philadelphia, get paid a healthy wage to build these apartments, pick up their check, and take that money out of the city. We need the money to stay in a close circle. We got to think about how money circulates in our communities. Okay? Equity in real estate and investments. This is impact. And we can create the entrepreneurial opportunities for the communities and ecosystems that we live in. Okay. And that's what I wanted to talk to everybody about today. Now, one other thing, if you can do me a favor, Kim, can you pull up a web browser for me? Okay, while she's doing that, I want you guys to write this down for me. Biz, B-I-Z, scoreline.com. You heard me talk a lot about how we walked up and down the streets of the business corridors in different communities. Over the years, my focus is business development. One of my partners, his background is through the banks, the financials. Another one's through government workforce development programs, economic development programs. So as we went and we go to all of these businesses, we each had a set of questions we asked, right? So what we did is we've taken and compiled all those questions into one survey. And when we were doing it manually, literally it would take as many as 24 to 28 hours to collect the data, massage the data to understand where the weaknesses and strengths of a business is, and then spit it back to them in a proposal in terms of these are the things your business needs to work on. You ready? BizScoreline.com. BIZ. Scoreline. 1Z. Yep.com. And so what we did over the past 12 months is we created an automated platform to do this. Okay? So what we do is we collect over 250 data points about a business. The majority of what this is radio buttons, making selections. We're going to ask you, what are your biggest challenges in your business? You have to figure out what your NACE code is. Once you pull this information, we say, what are the projected improvements you want to make on your business in the next 12 months? We're asking you, what's your level of technology? We want to understand how you hire and train people. We want to understand how your operations and productions work. And so what we do with this is when we put all of this information in, we're literally going to give you a 20-page report that's going to show you where your business is in your industry. And you can take that. We can say, okay, you need to fix your back taxes. You need to get an accountant to explain to you how your financials work. You need to work on your digital footprint. So these are all the things that we can itemize for you. So I want to encourage each and every one of you, you're going to be able to do this for free. All you have to do is go in there, log in when it says join. It'll probably take you 30, 35 minutes to answer all the questions. What happens on our end is we then take that information, because once you get your report, you can say, wow, so what do I do now? Right? So what you do at that point is that's when you reach out to us, or we'll know. So we'll get it and we'll have access to your report, and we'll reach out to you, ask you if you have questions, ask you if you want to act on the things that came up. And what we'll do is we'll actually build you a roadmap. Over time, what this allows us to do, and I don't mind telling everybody, so if you're scared about giving me your data, then okay, I get it. But unless we track ourselves, here's something else that came up, this thought-provoking situation, right? The same reports I just told you about, 1% investment by venture capitalists, 95% real estate developers. So when I read those reports, I'm like, oh my God, this was written in 2015. Let me see how much change there's been since then. There's no documentation of the change. So they can report and give you a snapshot on how bad it is, but nobody's thought to create anything about a solution. In my mind, we need the data to understand not how we're changing, but the impact of that change. If we don't have that data, we can't see where the sore spots are. We don't understand how to change our situation. We can localize that data. We can aggregate that data. We can slice it by industry. These are the things we need to have access to. So here it is, and then I'm going to let you guys go. Went to the Pew Foundation. It says, Pew Foundation, we're collecting all this great data. We want you to be the researcher to actually massage the data and create the reports for us. And their eyes kind of glazed over. And she said, I don't think we're the right organization for you. I said, why not? She said, because you're working with live data. We work with archival data. Do you realize my head starts spinning? I'm like, oh, wait a minute. There's a such thing as live data. right? And let me tell you what's interesting. They got live data on how many people got shot last week. But we don't have live data about how we are actively growing our business in our communities. I want to change that. And with that, I hope I left you guys with something to think about. I want you to be a part of our ecosystem. Let's talk. Let's talk about how we can support and make these things change for our purposes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. Let's give another hand to Kevin Williams and Black Squirrel Collective. Okay, I bet y'all know what Black Squirrel is now. So just a quick reminder, this website is bizscoreline.com. If you want to go ahead and snap a photo of that, bizscoreline.com. And to the point about being afraid to share data, we already have a Facebook, so too late. So I'm so excited to move to the final part of our day, which is going to be this one-on-one consulting that we're going to be doing. But first, we're going to take a quick break, about a 10-minute break, go get you a snack before they put it up and come back. And we're going to be joining our 3 panelists. So we will be back at 11, let's say 15. So you got 9 minutes. 11:15, we'll be back. Thank you. Our day, and if we can just have our speakers come, and you're going to be at this panel over here. And once you come, if you can use this mic to just introduce yourself, give us your name and your title. So we're just going to wait for them to make their way to the front of the room. And in the meantime, as we wait for them to come to the room and settle in, I just want to give folks a quick reminder. The discussions that we're starting today, the things that we're learning today, the tools that we are learning today are setting everyone up for Chroma Philly. Come October 7th, and we're going to burn this in everybody's head. Come October 7th, we're taking this to Philadelphia, and we are continuing these same conversations. And if you can't make it, scan this QR code, because we will be live streaming the event, and we want you to be there and take part. I keep saying this QR code. Take a picture. You're going to be sad if you didn't. Okay. So in the meantime, I'd also like to take a minute, again, to thank our sponsors of today's event, M&F Bank, as well as Black Squirrel Collective. They are making it possible for us to put this on and put this together. We're just waiting a little bit longer for our third panelist to join us. In the meantime, I would love to chat for a second and introduce somebody who is who is imperative in putting this whole thing together. Dr. Nan Johnson. Can we go ahead and give her a round of applause, everybody? Thank you so much. Yes, let's woo it up. Yes. And for those who are not aware, Dr. Nan is an educator. She is a pillar in our community. It's so funny because, spoiler alert, this is my beautiful grandmother. And I can remember growing up and watching her put on conferences like this for Black folks, for Latinx folks, and just trying to find resources for people and educate people my whole life. And watching it come to this is a really beautiful moment. She's going to be another one of our panelists who will be helping folks to have targeted questions for our 2 panelists over here, as well as Kevin Williams, who will be coming back so you can get the best information for your business.
And I want to say, you hear people talk a lot about child labor. They will tell you that when I had my school in Philadelphia, we usually like to laugh about this. They would come, I would get them to come in on Saturdays and clean. And then they would clean. And then once I semi-retired and moved to Hallsborough, they would be on the computer typing up programs. I would do the workshops at the Bronner Brothers show. And what would I have you do?
We were passing out flyers. I thought everybody did that on their summer vacation. I was like, y'all aren't working?
So when we talk about second and third generation in terms of wealth, it's not also about the dollars. It could be about what's up here. And so when I see information and see things about child labor, I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. See, I believe in child labor because another thing it does, it helps the work ethic. You start at an early age. You can't wait till they get 18 and 19 years old and want to put them to work and expect, okay, all of a sudden it's a strong work ethic. So and then when this was supposed to jump off, she had produced a show in New York. What was the name of the show?
It's called The Blackout.
The Blackout, and it was during Black History Month. So when I saw that, I was like, oh no, you're going to be the MC. So she's been running around MCing, and she and Jamel have been doing all kinds of things that normally would have probably cost $50,000 to $100,000. I'm not kidding. That's how much that type of technology costs. And then my other granddaughter, that is the president of Black and Brown Founders, I told her, I need $30,000 to put this on. She gave it to me. So I'm saying that to say, Melody, you got some good girls going. Keep it up. Because as long as you keep, what they say, keep the foot on the pedal, guess what? The product's going to come out to be exactly the way you want it to. Thank you very much. In October, we're going to be doing an event. Next year, the week after Mother's Day, I plan on doing a STEM event. And I won't say STEM, I'm going to say STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. We will turn up the steam.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Nan. We appreciate you. Thank you, thank you. And without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to our panelists who are going to be introducing themselves. We have that microphone if you want to go ahead and use that. If you can start by giving us your name, your title, and we'll go from there.
Kevin Williams, Black Squirrel founder.
Hello, I'm Mata Zapata. I am one of the co-founders of Zebras Unite, or Zebras Unite, as it said, which Ania Williams also helped to co-found. And I'm from Columbia, South Carolina.
And I am Sebla Alamayo, and I was part of the Black and Brown Founders, and I'm also a co-founder of a jewelry brand called Yene.
Amazing, amazing. So first, just to kind of kick us off, I wanted to check in with you folks and see off the bat, are there any questions that anyone had from the presentations? Or this is the time that we'd like to take for your businesses, right? For your NGOs. Given the information that you've received today and yesterday, what questions can these folks answer to get your business on the right track or to take it to the next level? Were there any questions that you folks had? And I'm gonna go to you because we want to be able to hear you.
I'm an old trade school teacher. And when I gave you those pencils and that piece of paper, didn't you say this old lady gonna make me do some homework? So while we're doing this, I want you to write out a description of your business. And then I want you to write out the amount of money you would like to make a year. Think about it. Did I miss something this morning?
No, you didn't miss anything. What is Zebra? Oh, actually, would you like to speak on that for a second, Mara?
Sure. Yes. What is a zebra? What is a zebra? That's a wonderful question, and I get it. And I love to tell people what it is. So as Kevin mentioned, this really alarming statistic, and as I know that you've mentioned as well, the reason why Black and Brown Founders was created was you all have probably heard of unicorn companies, right? These are companies like Facebook or Google. They're valued at over $1 billion. Everything that venture capital is designed to do is designed to incentivize these hyper growth at all costs, extractive types of companies we see the ramifications in our communities and our democracy. So that's a unicorn. And we termed this term zebra because we were seeing different types of companies that were born from women, from people of color, from communities traditionally excluded from the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And those people, they were both Black and white. They were for profit and for purpose. They were really motivated by serving their communities And they're what we call pro-social or mutualistic. In other words, all of us here are probably more concerned with seeing the problem solved than we are in being the ones who get credit for solving it, right? So all of us are motivated by community. The other thing is that zebras are real, unlike unicorns. And for those of you that don't know, zebras travel in a herd to avoid predators. And the reason why is because all of their stripes confuse the predator. And so that herd is called a dazzle. So we thought that was very cute. So all of you are officially part of the dazzle. And so really what we're seeing is there are different types of communities that are interested in alternative ownership, in more equitable and inclusive financing, in ways of pursuing business that are non-extractive of our communities, but that are regenerative and sustainable and give back. And so that is what a zebra is. So if you go to zebrasunite.com, we are an international organization with 30 chapters around the world. And I am one of the co-leads of the Columbia, South Carolina chapter. Yes, so consider yourself a zebra.
Okay, so so if we don't have any questions from the audience, I would love to ask a question because I think something that came up in both Subla's presentation and Kevin's is securing funding, right? Like it's something that I think a lot of small businesses struggle with. And I would love to hear about, in addition to what Black Squirrel is doing and what Black and Brown Founders is doing, how can business owners find the money, find the connections? Like how can they navigate that route?
I'll start this conversation. First off, for most of us, our first inclination is to go to the bank. And all banks work off an algorithm. There are certain things they're going to check the box, and there's certain things they're going to ask questions of. And if they can put it all in a nice tight package, you're going to get that money. If you miss one or two items, they're going to say, oh, sorry, but we can't help you. One of the things they can't afford to do is to help you become fundable. That's not a part of what they do. And one of the things you'll find out if you take the Biz Scoreline assessment is one of the things that we do is based on, because we're going to give you on a scale. There's 5 stages. One is pre-seed, then there's seed, then there's sustainable, and then there's growth. And so as you go through, we've got ideation, right? So as you go through these stages, you're going to have more qualifications and more requirements, but the qualifications for funding will be listed at the bottom of your report. And so if you're in ideation, we're going to say friends and family, credit cards, right? And grants. But that's pretty much all that you're going to really be qualified for. And so those are the areas that you should focus on. Sometimes psychologically, we get defeated before we get started because we get rejected and don't know why. There's other reasons as well, but I'll let that be my discussion.
So from my experience, exactly what you said, which was the only thing at our disposal was credit card. If you're lucky and you have savings that you can utilize that, or really family, friends, immediate network that you can go to, you can try to give them a lucrative, return just to get that. Because one thing that I can actually share after being in business for 2 years. So we had 2 years worth of tax return that we had filed by that time. We went to Citibank just because I had a relationship with them with my personal account. And I said, hey, we've been in business for 2 years. We would like to get a loan because initially we were told you have to be in business for 2 years. And we're like, okay, how can I exist to be in business for 2 years to get the money? That was the question. So initially, you're very limited, right? So if you can find grants, if you can apply for various programs, you can go that route, or what Kevin said and what I just said earlier. But then even after you get to a certain period, we were told for every $100,000 revenue that you generate in a year, you will get up to $10,000 in loan. Like, at that early stage, depending on your business, you have to even generate a 6-figure sales revenue to get $10,000 in loan, right? So loans can be very discouraging. And that's why, like, sometimes it's very intimidating to even start your idea, because you're like, I'm not going to get further with the fund, but there are creative ways to do it. And I think also, to go back with what I said, sometimes it's also being very efficient in how you start your idea. So you do not need a significant amount of money to even start your business, right? Like, started with a modest resource, or the amount of funds you need to begin with to get that the ideation phase, essentially, that Kevin was talking about, is not going to require a significant fund amount, if that makes sense.
Okay, awesome.
I'll just briefly say, I loved that Dr. Nan actually mentioned this event and the price, the $30,000 investment. The other thing that I will say that I've noticed that's been really helpful for founders is to host an event. Events can be a revenue stream for your company. And so it's something that's oftentimes overlooked, but it gives you some gas in the tank and some runway. And so an event is coming out of a company's marketing line item, right? And so if you talk to, if Dr. Nan talked to K&L Gates, let's say, or talked to a large accounting firm, or talked to a large corporate sponsor and said, hey, we know that this, culture work is important to you. We would like for you to sponsor this event. Getting another $30,000 check, making this, this type of revenue is actually really interesting for businesses, because it says, I'm going to create a community of practice. I'm going to host a convening. I'm going to bring people into the room. I'm going to get paid as a producer of that event. And then I'm going to build a ground game. And I've just noticed that I've learned this so much from Ania and from her entire family, that events actually can check a lot of boxes when it comes to revenue, runway, community, culture, bringing a community of practice together, and kind of threading the needle of a number of different companies and organizations that are sharing a problem set. So don't overlook sponsorship and event as a potential revenue source for your business also.
Thank you so much. So one thing that I am wondering, and I'm sure our audience is as well, is for folks who maybe have a business that is not new, right? It's been around for a while, and maybe they just haven't hit their steam, right? Like, they're not at full capacity, or they know that their business can be doing more. What things should they consider, or how can they reevaluate their game plan so that they can get out of that rut and take their business to the next level?
I am in that place right now. So if you remember, when I started, I said, you can just have a business, right? But where in the business are you is a different question, because the challenge or what you're trying to do is very different, right? So I have a validated, established business. The next is scale, right? You're trying to scale it, and that is a completely different challenge, right? And that is the point where we're like, all right, whatever we've done got us from that 0 to passing that 6-figure sales revenue. But if I'm trying to double my revenue, and if I'm trying to scale it, I need a completely different game, right? I need different mentors. I need industry experts. I'm in the jewelry space, so I'm no longer going to just a general business coach. I need somebody who has that retail experience, say, how can I get my product into one of these whatever outlets, or how can I scale? So mentorship is one of those powerful things they're talked about. But in my opinion, it's also hard to get because it's kind of like I always ask, how do you find a mentor, right? That's like a common question, like a lot of people ask. Finding those resources, Kevin, you invested a lot of time, and that is such a powerful thing because on one side, you're here providing all these resources, and then on the other side, there are people who need it, but they don't know that you even exist with those capability, right? So I think one of those challenges, like getting to the right people who can guide you, who have that, you invest in yourself, right? You pay whatever you need to pay, but they have that exact solution to help you strategize, because whatever brought you this far is not going to take you further, right? So the scale is different. So it's different strategy, but yeah, I think maybe you have the better answer.
A lot of what I'm going to say is going to pretty much piggyback on the first thing that came to mind is mentoring and coaching. But now let's take that another step. Because for a lot of us, what we do is we create the business. I think sometimes when we think about friends and family as investors, sometimes we don't think about them as human capital. So one of the things that we do in our entrepreneurship program is we're saying, when you do your business plan, build out your team. The first thing you're thinking is, I'm a one-man team. I'm going to do everything, right? And that's the first thing that's going to burn you out. What you need to start thinking of at the very beginning in that strategy are the roles that need to be filled. Now, you might end up filling 3 of those 5. But at some point, what needs to be a part of your strategy is how you extricate yourself out of that role and bring in real people. Sometimes it's going to be family members who have that skill set, if you're lucky. Sometimes it's going to be you finding people who just believe in what you're doing and will volunteer. But what it also does, and this is where it leads to the next thing, is it helps you to understand how to create a diverse team. You need to hear somebody else's input on your business. And don't be thin-skinned and get offended when they tell you something that you don't want to hear. Because sometimes and I can tell you, I've done this numerous times, I get so consumed with the whole development of the business that I'm operating in a vacuum. I can't hear anything else outside of my own voice, right? And so this is where we also, and this is a part of that business development, think about the advisory team that you need to set up. You need somebody on that advisory team that's going to help you with your financials in terms of raising money. You need somebody that's going to actually help you with your customer base. These are the roles that you have. But what you need is that external source that's going to infuse that, right? So when you're developing your product and you're developing your processes, you can make a perfect machine. But it's not until you actually activate that machine and put fuel in it and you realize, oh my God, I don't have enough gas, right? So what you need is that person that's going to be there and say, oh, guess what? Come on, I got you. So my point is, and this is a very good question, is you're going to hit that point where you feel like you've exhausted all your resources. But what you haven't done is you really haven't extended yourself to take in support. And you might be surprised on how valuable that support can be.
Okay, so Subla just brought up a really good point, and I am so curious to hear what folks have to say, right? Like building this network and building your advisory team. How do you meet these people? Where do you find these people? Do you slide in their LinkedIn DMs? Like, what are we doing? How can a business owner get their business or their ideas or just themselves in front of the people that can make the changes and help them grow their business?
And this is an old tried and true method. Go to your local chambers. Look online for associations. Virtual associations are just as good as in person. You just need to create that dialogue. And you're going to start building, because just like for especially for younger people, they'll build communities online. And see, one of the things that I feel very strongly about, the only real community I've been able to build is on LinkedIn. But it's a strong community. All I have to do is every other week, I reach out to a certain segment of my online community to just tell them, say, hey, guess what? This is the problem that we're dealing with. What would you do? I just put it out there as a poll and I get feedback, right? Because this is the gang that they see what I do. They like what we do. I want them to have a voice, right? And what it does is it really helps open my mindset in terms of some of the things that I'm thinking about sometimes. But it's a real thing. And I would say it wasn't until this business that I actually realized, especially like you heard me talk about the real estate development, I needed real estate people on that advisory committee because they were the ones that could say, yep, you know what? This is your source for concrete. It's the only minority source for concrete in the 3 states, right? So now I get that introduction. They want the business, right? They're going to set terms up for me. They're going to say, when I introduce them to the developers, they're not going to say, okay, I want 50% up front. They say, okay, let's go over the project together and I can show you where I can save you money. I can show you where I can help you most. They become a part of that process.
And events like this. No, because, sometimes you take it for granted, but like just now, within short period of like a break, you find people, accounting, tax, graphic design, like, there are people with different industry that whatever your business is, at least for me, that's kind of how I've been able to connect with people. And sometimes it takes 2-3 degrees, but at least they'll be able to lead you. So I have met people through 6 degrees of contact, right? Sometimes it's like a very, very long path, but getting to that one person. I think events like this, if you have an opportunity to attend as many events and be ready to network, have your business card or some form of contact where you want to be reached at. And I think that's one way. At least that has worked for me, but I've always been curious with that question, so.
Okay, perfect. We have one quick question from GDI Communications.
I have a question as a business owner, and it's something that I know y'all. It's something for us, but it's going to help us also. The big question I want to know is, what was y'all biggest failure to let y'all know, okay, we need to keep going?
So when we started Black Squirrel, the first problem we looked to solve is the small business assessment. The first real failure was an understanding that people weren't going to automatically buy what we put out there. And what I mean by that is I can talk about the financial requirements all day long. Unless I can give that person or that business a reason. So I show people the platform and it's like, oh, okay, what? Right? So my first real failure was trying to impress people who weren't even in the industry. Okay. So what that meant for me is when I'm polling people and when I want reflection on the effectiveness of what we built, I need to talk to the people who may very well be users. See, at first I was thinking that I don't want to talk to the potential users because I don't want them to think that we don't have an effective product. Also, I didn't want to talk to them until I was asking them for money. So I had to change my mindset and I had to absolutely broaden the feedback loop that I needed to develop to understand how to move forward.
I think for me, I've had like a reverse experience where I started with a clear understanding of what I was trying to do, and I was on a good path of doing it. But then I think, Kevin, you touched on this. Once you start getting into the actual business and you're wearing like 10 hats and you're the accountant, the CEO, the employee, the designer, everything, you start to disconnect with what's got you started in the first place. So from my experience, I had a period where I would consider it as a period of failure, because once you start disconnecting with your customers and the value and why you are doing it in the first place, and you start to be in this vicious cycle and you're just putting out fire because you have to let things run, you start to lose meaning, and it just becomes just another cyclical day, right? And so you kind of have, like, for me, that was a moment of a big question mark and a big moment where we said we need to stop and we need to come back and we need to start that feedback loop, right? Because we're in a creative space, we're in that industry where we have to talk to people, we have to produce something that people want. And when you disconnect to that, then also your business starts, you can see your sales going down, and like you're not putting out products that you need to put out, right? So sometimes the back end of what's going on reflects on your financials as well. Yeah.
Great. So something that you just touched on, Subla, and I believe Ms. Melody Campbell mentioned it yesterday, is how you are interacting with your community and with your consumer base, right? I believe earlier somebody mentioned events. What are other ways that businesses can have impactful and also, let's be real, in the budget ways to interact with their consumer base and grow it?
The initial phase, at least for me, was very manual process. Like, we would literally like come up with a list of contacts we would have in our community and reach out. But once you start establishing it and you need a digital footprint, right? We go back to the same kind of conversation. Like, if you have a business in this day, whether you believe it or do not believe it, or whatever your opinions are about Meta or LinkedIn or TikTok, whatever your opinions are, at the end of the day, it's not about your opinion. It's about who's your customer and where are they? You need to find them, right? So once you have that presence and you start to slowly grow it, you can use those tools to have conversation. So we have a couple of like polls that we run, even on Instagram, where if we're trying to put out something, we'll be like, what do you think? This color or this color? Literally, we select gemstone colors just on Instagram and we're like, this or this. And we have like a poll, and if it's like 70%, we're like, well, let's try to prototype this and move forward, right? So digital footprint normally allows you to do those things because it's not like a door you have to open and you have to invite people and you're waiting for them and have that dialogue, right? So digital.
Only thing I'm going to add to that is, as we move forward, especially from a digital standpoint, we have to look at cost benefit, right? So it's amazing how quickly you can get that feedback when you really have, I'm not even going to say effective. It just has to be present. You just have to be present on the digital landscape, because something is easy. And when we bring in small businesses through our platform, the first thing I do is I'm gonna call them up online and I want to see how they come up on Google, right? I can't tell you how many times I see their business on Google and underneath it says, do you want to claim this business? Is this your business? It seems like a sophisticated word, but analytics is not sophisticated. Everybody in this room can read a trend when you see a graph that goes up. And you also see when that graph goes down, right? And you look at when you're looking at your business analytics, how many times people have clicked on your business, and you see when it went down. And if you can associate that with when you did not pay attention, you can probably remember, I was on vacation that week, right? Or I just never even bothered to look to see what my community was saying, what they were telling me. If you're on Amazon, and Amazon's one of the best on giving you reviews, right? And without looking at your reviews, if your sales start to drop, I can guarantee you it's because somebody gave you a 3.
Mm.
You have to be reactive and be more proactive and actually think about how you're going to compensate for that mediocre rating. So you have to start thinking about how you're going to engage the community and impact what the responses are going to be.
And was there a question that somebody had in the? Yeah. You're good. Yeah.
I have a question, a statement, a comment, all of that. Okay. I'm gonna lay my business out and just take all its clothes off and just let it be naked, okay? All right. I own a boarding house. That's the business that I have. I retired. I married and moved to this community, and because my house was laying bare, I decided to use it to bring in revenue for me during my retirement. I have tenants in the home at this point, but I need to do some more renovations so that I can bring in more revenue. At this point, they share bathroom, kitchen, laundry room, and they live in private rooms, but the renovation will be shared rooms for occupancy capacity to be 10 tenants. With that and the amount that they're paying, I can never see me getting to the revenue that I want to make within a year's time. Because of the area that I'm in, I won't be able to charge them but so much rent. And because it's a boarding house and they're not the only occupant in the home, I won't be able to raise the rent. So the question is, with the tenants being in the home and the way they are, and me only being able to get to a capacity of 10 people, what can I possibly do that could bring in more revenue without charging them more money? And the other question that I have is, might be a question that some of the others in here might have, but might not ask it, but I'm the kind of person that just knock the door off the hinges and just say it, okay? During that process, I did borrow from the EID, is it EIDL? Loan, SBA loan, and renovated the house to start the business. I now have to pay back that loan, very low interest, but I don't want to pay a loan. So my question is, are there any grants, any funding out there that would take care of that small business loan so that I won't have to pay that loan back? Do you have any information regarding that?
I'll jump in with both feet. I can't think of it, but I'll let Dr. Nan correct me. But I don't know of any scenario that you can be relieved of the loan from the SBA. But what I can say, and this is how I would look at it, is how do you structure or restructure your revenue so that loan doesn't become such a big burden? That what I'm hearing you say. Now, two things that I also heard. You said boarding house. And I'm going to use an example of something that I saw in Philadelphia that was amazing. Philadelphia has a nice concentration of different cultures and different communities. So what this one young lady did, she actually took the building that she bought, and instead of it being an Airbnb or being a boarding home, she fixed it up to be a boutique hotel in the Hispanic community. Now, why does that seem impressive to me? Because if you come into a city, especially in an immigrant community, they don't want to have to come all the way from downtown to be in a hotel, right? Her boutique hotel is right there in the community. So they have family that come in from Puerto Rico. They're going to stay at the hotel. The community supports that home, the building that she put there. I'm not sure about what your community situation is or why you feel like you can't ask for a certain amount, But I think that if you thought of it more, instead of people being there permanently, and maybe, see, this is where I may be out of bounds, but if you want to look at that building as a business, then the tenants that you have, if they're not supporting you and they can't afford to support you, you got to find other tenants. And if you are looking at it as a hotel, where it's temporary stay, and you can if the community is dense enough that it can support 10 people weekly coming through, you can probably make more money than having people that live there permanently. This is just a guess with me by the information that you gave.
I think it's just building on what he just said. I do not know about that side of the industry or the world with real estate and what you can do. But just earlier, I think it was Jeffrey who asked a question. What about if you have something and it just changes and you're not either optimizing on the revenue or it's just not working out? Sometimes if you are looking at it from your perspective of, I have this property and this is what I am doing and this is currently the situation, sometimes it's just a shift that you need, because the reality is you have that property, fact, you have that space, fact. The next step is, again, there are different factors that I'm unable to give you maybe more solid responses, but what is the area like? Proximity to transportation, to the air, whatever the factor might be. Can you take that same property you have, but use it for a different approach, right? If it was more of a permanent housing, can it be a temporary one? If it's a temporary one, is it more of a specific, because lately what you're seeing is there are people who are also moving to different states for short-term housing. So, for example, if people are on work travel, whatever the travel situation might be, there are like even nurses that kind of go around, but they don't need like a year lease, or they don't want to do month to month, but they want like a furnished living where they just want to, stay for like 30 days, or it might be, but it's very hard to find those. You're either going to a hotel, or you have to get into go to apartments and find, those will take you for a short term. Most short term lease are 90 days. If you go to most places do not even have furnished options, right? So you have the most important asset, which is you have the property, but is there a way maybe to reframe and say, yes, I may have these limited units, but what would be approach if you do basic furnishing and then you do furnished living and you have minimum of 15-day required, whatever it might be, right? There are different options basically, right? I don't know enough, so I'm just throwing out random ideas, but sometimes you have the resources or tools, you just don't know maybe how to market it. And also kind of like Kevin said, why not be able to charge more for it? Is it because of the area? Is it based on a certain research, or is it just because those current ones in there are not willing to pay, which is a different reason, right? So it would require more research into understanding the situation, but I do want to say you do have options to kind of look at it from different angle depending on the circumstance that of the environment.
From a matter of proximity, we would consider student housing. There's a lot, like I said, in Philadelphia, they have a lot of universities, and the opportunity to rent out housing, seasonal housing to students, you can get 3 times the money, and they're not going to be there that long, but it still is an effective and convenient living situation for them. So.
Where are you from? Uh-huh. Hallsborough. Okay, good. For that loan, that IDL loan, you can get that deferred for 6 months. But you have to pay. You still have to pay the interest on whatever you borrowed. But how many rooms do you have? 3. Okay, it's a program that they are doing from the state. It's called supportive living. They do pay for the clients to live in a home, and you can share the home. They share the kitchen, living room, and the bathrooms. And they have to have a year's lease. They even pay for their furniture. They put up new furniture, new living room furniture, new bedroom furniture. But the only drawback, I know you said 10, they will only let you do 3. So that's a program. The state will pay you to do that, to use your house. So certain people will have somewhere to stay, but you're limited to 3. It's a supportive living, but they have to have a year's lease, and they'll come in, and I don't know what kind of furniture you have. They'll come in and put them brand new furniture in there, new tables, chairs, couches, bedroom sets that'll look better than your furniture at the house. So, no, it's called supportive living. It doesn't have to be licensed. Yeah.
So, So I just want to jump in real quick. Shout out to Miss Melody Campbell. She was one of our panelists yesterday. Let's give her a round of applause. She just jumped in there and started giving advice. This is why we need to be doing networking after this, right? And thank you, Pastor Sean, for that information. Everybody, we need to be exchanging information because in this room, there's a wealth of information and a lot of your questions can be answered. And this is where your human capital that folks were talking about earlier, it starts right here. She just jumped in and was like, this, here's a program. And also, thank you, ma'am, for that personal question, because sometimes it's tough to ask questions about our businesses in front of a room full of people that maybe we know some folks and maybe we don't. But this is the space to ask those questions and have those discussions. And most likely somebody else in this room has a similar question. With that, is there anyone else that has a question that is specific to their business that you'd like addressed today or you'd like the panel or the room to talk about? Head to the back, and it's Miracle, right? Okay. Oops, sorry. Okay. Here you go.
Okay, so bear with me. I'm not the biggest on speaking in public, but my name is Miracle, and I do not have a business right now, but I am interested in getting into the beauty industry. So I have several ideas, but I think so far my biggest thing has been market research. I know everybody can say, well, just go on Google. You know, there's plenty of resources, but it gets overwhelming. There's a lot of resources and it's kind of hard to kind of pinpoint. I'm like, okay, well, do I take this or do I get this? And it's been really difficult to kind of narrow everything down. So my question really is, do you guys have any tidbits, any suggestions on kind of narrowing that down when it comes to doing market research, maybe certain components or maybe certain information, and even also information about target audiences and your ideal customer. I think that's where I'm kind of struggling a little bit, just trying to narrow all that down and kind of knowing exactly what I need to be doing.
I think I can at least give you a starting point. What I'll do, I'll give me your email address, and I'll give you an industry report for hair and beauty that will show you. It'll give you a trend on what they've been doing in the past 5 years, and they'll trend how much they see projected in the increase in the next 5 years. It'll give you a breakdown of product segmentation and what your services need to be, and things of that nature. So it might be a good starting point for you. The only other thing that I would add to that is thinking about, taking the information that I give you and comparing it to whatever area that you want to put it in. Because you have to think about, once you start actually putting together a plan, you have to think about not just who your target audience is, but find out how you're going to create that space. We all, guess what? You know what? I can remember the first time I bought a new car. But I'm not a car kind of guy, new car kind of guy. I love cars, but I like to get in them and drive them. After the sparkle wore off of that new car, I never bought a new car again. My point being is, you don't have to have new shiny furniture. You don't have to have, all the latest and the greatest. Just be practical about how you build it out. And I'm going to tell you this. I remember when I bought my first salon, and I'm thinking like business. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to buy the customer list. I'm going to have to buy the inventory. I'm going to have to buy the furniture. I'm going to have to buy the lease. I'm going to have to buy the business. And I went to a friend of mine who had already had his own salon. And I said, am I going to have to spend $30,000, $40,000? He looked at me and laughed at me, right? He says, Kevin, somebody's going to take your money. Right? Bought my first salon for $6,000 because all I bought was the furniture and the inventory and took over the lease. Then I had to make arrangements for each of the hairstylists to stay on, because in that business, they will leave and they will take their book of business with them. The only thing that saved us was I immediately put a computer in that business, and I put every single customer in that computer so I can actually send out information to them. So if that person left, see, for them, this was back in the 80s. So they would literally, no, it was the 90s. They would literally dial in their customer and say, oh, I left that salon and went to another one. I'm sending them a postcard and saying they're going to get half off on their next visit so I can keep their business. And I'm going to build up a new hairstylist. So my point being is that it's very low. You can get in at a very low cost. You really have to pay attention to your customers and know who your customer base is going to be, and make sure that your pricing is right.
Where are you located? Okay. And are you thinking of doing like in-person beauty services? What kind? Okay. Mm-hmm. One resource that I'll just share that I've been really interested in Columbia that we've started to try. So I'm part of a group called Cola Love. Columbia is called Cola, as some of you know. And we've been doing pop-ups. And so the pop-up model I'm really interested in because it allows people to experiment with entrepreneurship without having to go whole hog and to getting a lease and, doing the whole thing. So in this instance, one suggestion might be to partner with an existing beauty provider that doesn't do microblading and say, hey, can we do a partnership? I want to do a pop-up where you would provide microblading at this salon, and if they have a social media following, that's all the better. And so it allows you to sort of do like a low-cost experiment. And then at the end of that experiment, you can have a survey that allows you to do the market research of your community. So pop-ups to me represent just an ability to partner, to leverage another social media platform to do something that's relatively low cost. And in some of the pop-ups that we've been doing in Columbia, for example, we've been going into empty spaces that are for lease but have not been activated. And the real estate developers have actually been sponsoring our pop-ups because it's bringing people into the building that otherwise wouldn't be activated. So I'm happy to share more information about that, but that could be one easy, low cost, low lift way of starting to get some market interest in the services that you wish to provide.
And then one last point I'll add in addition to that is don't get just stuck on doing market research on a computer. Like, you'll start getting lost, right? It's very overwhelming. So in general, in that industry, right, yours is like niche service, but like try to reach out to businesses who are doing different services in that entire industry. Like, talk to them. How was it? How did you, like, try to understand the nature of the business, because that beauty, skincare industry would have a common theme to it, right? You might be focusing on different complementary area, but the care and the things that are important might be the same. So try to talk to existing business owners that are in that space to learn as much from them. So your research is them. And trust me, people are so open to, sometimes you don't think so. You're shy to share your idea, but you'll be surprised. People are very interested in helping too. I found that. I've done that. That was one of my research, to go to different brands who are in different space. They were not even in jewelry. One was in handbags, one was in child collection, like clothing line. I talked to different brands, right? But we were all in the retail space. They were all e-commerce. It was the fashion industry, but I'm interested in jewelry, right? But I needed to understand the business in retail, right? So don't just sit and do research. That's one aspect, to understand the entire industry, where it's going, where it is, and then kind of bringing it back tomorrow to like actually like trying to find venues and ways to do it. But also don't be shy to talk to people who are already doing it. They're your research too. Oh, that was such a great answer. Does anyone have any other questions specific to their business that they'd like to?
I have a product that I have made, and I am in the midst of wanting to get it marketed. So I was just trying to see something that can help me to get jump started and know which way to go to get started. So
What is your product?
I make hair growth products.
Hair growth products, is that right? Okay.
From a safety standpoint, I think there's certain regulatory things you want to pay attention to first. You want to be able to get a chemist or someone to be able to break down the things that are part of what you're packaging. Make sure that it gets tested properly on different people's skin and hair and those types of things. You got to eliminate any kind of liability issues first. And so that you need to make sure that you properly test your product first. Aside from that, it really is just a matter of you can go through a very detailed process in terms of packaging, but I'm going to stick to the basics. One of the things that you're going to need is you're going to make sure that you have a universal product code. When we think about those things, we don't always we just think about, okay, I can sell my product from a salon, from wherever. But if you say, okay, I want to sell my product out of Target, right? And I have to say, recently, Target is doing a phenomenal job on offering minority small business products through their stores. But there's certain requirements. And one of them is you have to have a university product code. Because without that code, you have to understand everything they do is automated. So what they want to be able to do is just put a scan gun on the product and check the inventory and know whether it needs to be refilled or not. If they have to do it manually, your product's not going to get accepted. But you also have to think of what the packaging looks like, what size the packaging needs to do, what your pricing structure is, and make sure that your margins are right. For most products and that you're looking to sell, your suggested price has to be at least 3 times whatever your cost. I said at least, you're probably better off being 4 times. Because once you start adding in the marketing, shipping, distribution, that's going to eat up a great piece of that margin. So that cost of that goods sold is going to increase. So always make sure that you got your proper right pricing on that product.
One thing I'll add, I don't know how far you are in that stage, but just the product you're offering is something that could show result. So I don't know how far you've gotten into it, but it seems like even to really kick off, you could start by, because I'm familiar with 1 or 2 brands that are in that space, and the way they came out was they already tested it enough outside of the, the legal, the regulation stuff you have to ensure, the before and afters, right? What has that journey been? Here's starting point. Here's how your product came into the picture, and then here's the result, right? Because for you, it seems like your offering is use it to get this, right? And you have to have those validations handy to be able to show the kind of like a testimonial, but then even for you, it's a word you can give for the product you're going to offer. So I would spend a lot of time on that, because you want to be able to show that result before really going out on the market, because there's a little bit of claim to it, right? It's not just a product, use it where, throw it whenever you don't want. This is like, use it to get this result. So you want to spend a good amount of time with the validation, and then getting that validation to take it to the next step, which is opening it up to a bigger space.
Hey, I wonder if we can drop the Instagram for that hair growth line.
That's actually a good thing too. Like this is why like digital footprint is like, for you, to be honest, you can even have a very low cost entry, because with that, I mean, it's literally, that's what we're flooded with. Like, right. When you go to Instagram, again, your opinion about Instagram doesn't matter at this point. At this point, it's, you have a product that you want people to use, and all you want is people to buy into your product. Especially if people have certain challenges, you want to get those 10 people, 15 people to be part of your journey. You can document their journey literally at zero cost. You can start your Instagram page, have few people to join, and then document everything and create marketing materials and let the Instagram do the work for you. You can start $0.
So we have 5 minutes remaining. Are there any final questions that folks wanted answers to before we wrap our panelists for the day? I was like, is she saying stop?
Sorry, I'm holding up my hand ready. Okay, so I have a question regarding trademarks, word marks, things like that, from the IP stance when you're trying to get a product branded or a group registered, things of that nature. Because we don't want to go out of order. So I think we're wanting to maybe do something that's already in use on the market, get that trademark. But if we're starting off with limited funds, is there a order that you can tell me is most important for getting certain things registered federally and or with the state that's overarching? I'm thinking maybe the word mark before we go worrying about other things, slogans, phrases, products, get the overall encompassing word marks first. I don't know if anyone else deals with this or has dealt with it, but I would love any tips or guidance. Thank you.
So my jewelry brand is registered. It has a registered trademark. I did it before I launched. So I have very limited experience from that. So my products are not marked or anything, but my phrase, my logo, everything is registered, right? So it was just an open search, US Patent Office, talked to a few people who worked there, and they don't have much resource. If you randomly find somebody that works at the patent office, they don't have that much knowledge. So, but there are, I can try to get you information, but there isn't like a sequence, to be honest with you. It's a matter of where you are with the brand. For us, we didn't want to launch a product, because once we launched it, we felt like we were going to be on the sprint to like focus on production, whatever. And then trust me, when people see good idea, it doesn't take a second to snatch it. So sometimes if you really are serious about your business, it doesn't hurt. It wasn't a significant investment either. Like it didn't break us. We had so much more other cost than trademarking the logo, but at the very least protect the name and then do it one step at a time. Sometimes you don't have to do everything at once, but protect the identity of the brand at least.
Just so folks who are possibly wondering, Sabla, is there a number or like a range that it would cost to trademark a logo or trademark a name, just so we can kind of get an idea of what a ballpark would be?
This was some 5-6 years ago. I do not remember, but I would have to, maybe I might do a quick search to my profile. Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay, well, are there any final questions before we wrap out for the afternoon?
And it's adding to what she just said with the trademark and with the logo and stuff. You can find your graphic designer like I did with my logo with the GDI and the GDI logo. I had someone to make the logo from scratch and did it that way, so I don't have to worry about the trademark immediately, because I know nobody else won't have that logo, nobody else won't have that print and the color. So just like if you see Walmart, you know their color, so you know that's Walmart. I know that's a company. I know what they stand for. So you can get someone have work with them, collaborate to make up your logo. And then make sure you know your colors and keep that as your primary color, and then do that and work with that until you get it patented, until you get it trademarked. But until then, you don't have to worry about someone coming after you, because the thing is, you made it from scratch. Nobody's going to bother you for that logo. So that's what I had done, Dr. Nance.
You mail it to yourself and don't open the letter. Right. That's a patented move.
That's a old school oldie but goodie. Thank you, Dr. Dan. Okay, y'all. So this has been fun. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists one more time. This has been a good day. And just so folks can have your information one more time, can we just go down that line one more time and just, if there's a website or a handle that you want to drop so folks can reach you, that would be amazing before we close this out.
Sablala Mayo, I'm representing the bootcamp. So bootstrappingbootcamp.com to learn all the good stuff we talked about. Personally for me, my brand is YENAE.com. What else did you say?
Just your name and any way we can reach you.
Yes, you can find me everywhere at MARAZEPEDA, my website, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And then I invite all of you to go to zebrasunite.com, and there you can join our online community and connect with other folks from around the world as well.
You can find me at blacksquirrel.co, or you can go to our business assessment website, which is bizscoreline.com.
Amazing. And a final round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, this has been an amazing day. Thank you again to Black and Brown Founders for putting this on. And as we have said so many times, this is the first half of the game, right? And we're going to be closing out the game come October 7th in Philly. We're going to take the conversations that we started, take the questions that we have, and take it all to the next level. That's October 7th in Philadelphia. #Chroma Philly. If you want more information about that, you can just snap this QR code. It'll take you straight to the events. As I mentioned before, we'd love to have you there and get a cheesesteak, but we're going to be live streaming it as well because we want everybody to have access to the information and to the conversations. Again, my name is Jeffrey Elizabeth Copeland. I'm so happy to have had this with y'all today and yesterday, and I look forward to the next time. Thank you so much.